Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are you tonight? Are you ready for a band concert? I have the absolute pleasure of welcoming you and introducing to you Mrs. Urban, our phenomenal band director. Please give her a big round of applause. Under Mrs. Urban's leadership, our band has grown exponentially, and we are incredibly proud of all the scholars that you will see here tonight, from your very beginning all the way to our advanced level. It's a beautiful thing to watch their progress and the beauty that they create together. Before we start, we would like to thank Mr. Bradley for graciously allowing us into this facility when we are clearly too big for our own at this point. We have so many people. Thank you for coming out tonight. And also, we'd like to thank Mr. Duran, the music teacher at the Orange Park campus. He is very gracious as well and always offers to help us in our musical endeavors. And with that being said, let's welcome the beginning concert band.
Our next piece, entitled Celtic Air and Dance, features two traditional folk melodies. This piece opens with the touching and melodious The Parting Glass. The flutes and percussion take center stage on the dance like Thigh My Skiff, which translates to A Fairy's Love Song. The entire band gets into the act for the arousing finish.
Our next piece is a tempest. This programmatic work was meant to depict a breaking storm at sea. Listen for the storm in this distance as it gradually moves closer and finally hits. The swirling wind, depicted by the dancing Estino and the flutes, is juxtaposed by the lyrical line in the saxophones that depicts the water of the sea. The storm intensifies and never lets up.
Of Locks and Thistles is a stirring lyrical composition for band written in the spirit of the Appalachian folk song. The composer has interwoven original melodies and lush harmonies with the traditional Scottish folk song, Loch Lomond, as a musical homage to the early pioneers of the Appalachian Mountains. Filled with countless musical and teaching opportunities, this work features most every section in the band with tuneful melodies and beautiful musical moments.
Byzantine Empire, also known as the Eastern Roman Empire, lasted from about 400 to 1453 AD and covered much of the area of what is now Turkey. With the conquest of the Byzantine Empire's capital, Constantinople, the Ottoman Empire began its reign in 1453. After World War I, the Ottoman Empire fell, and the Republic of Turkey was formed in 1923. Byzantine dances is generally meant to portray a set of Turkish dances. The opening dance is fast and energetic, written in the style of a Roma gypsy dance. During this upbeat dance, the melody incorporates grace notes that are fun to play, while the harmony and bass line incorporate enjoyable counter melodies and syncopated lines. The slower section in the middle of the piece is written in the style of the Zeybek dance. This type of dance is often performed by a solo dance, symbolizing courage and heroism. The dancer uses outstretched arms, almost resembling a great hawk. In this piece, sounds are uniquely incorporated to create Turkish sounding elements. Much of the melodic material is based on either the Byzantine scale or the harmonic major scale, both of which produce a somewhat exotic sound. Another element is the Turkish fiddles, or finger cymbals, which are often used in dances of this region.
John Giuseppe McGee Jr. Oh, I had slipped the surly bonds of earth, and danced the skies on laughter-slivered wings. Sunward I've climbed, and joining the tumbling mirth of sun-split clouds, and done 100 things you've not even dreamed of. Wheeled and soared and swung, high in the sunlit silence. Hovering there, I've chased the shouting wind along and flung my eager craft through footless halls of air. Up, up, along delirious burning blue, I've topped the wind-swept heights with easy grace, where never lark or even eagle flew. And while with silent lifting mind I've trod, the high, untrespassed sanctity of space, put out my hand and touched the face of God. Much like this poem that captures the awe and exhilaration American World War II pilot John Giuseppe McGee Jr. felt when flying, this piece calls to mind the thrills and freedoms of flying. Opening with rhythmic energy in the winds and rich harmonic statements in the brass, the mood gives way to a sensitive lyrical section. A dynamic development of the opening statement leads, ultimately, to a powerful and climactic ending. Please enjoy Chase the Shouting Wind.
Solus Ane is our next piece. Solus and Ane are two Gaelic words meaning joy and yesterday. It was named after Margine Papat, a band director friend of the composer Samuel Hanzo. It was named after the absolute pleasure this band director had spending every day living with music with her students. Margine is Irish, and since Irish melodies translate well to wind band, Hanzo decided that he could not pass up the opportunity. All the themes in Solus Ane are original. The main theme is introduced in A flat at the beginning of the piece, then its second statement with full ensemble moves to E flat. The first two appearances of the theme in a chorale setting. The piece breaks into a jig in the middle section. The upper woodwinds introduce a new theme, while the percussion lays the foundation with two syncopated rhythms playing off each other. Simultaneously, the bass instruments are playing a minor key piper's drum, and the middle instruments are playing the original chorale theme, now serving as a counter melody / harmony. Part 2 of the jig turns into a major bass This time, the upper woodwinds still play the jig while the rest of the ensemble play the chorale harmony that accompanied the original theme, following a bridge that moves the piece to F major. The main theme is brought back, this time with an alternate ending that concludes the piece.
I'm going to invite a couple of students up. These kids wrote this next piece for our band, so I'm going to let them introduce it.
Over Christmas break, Gabe and I got together to compose a piece for our symphonic band. The piece is entitled Brasinger. It was inspired by the prologue to Christopher Paolini's novel Aragon.
In the story, a shade, a person corrupted by evil spirits, ambushes an elf named Ari. The shade is trying to steal a mysterious stone from her. Realizing her impending capture, Ari uses powerful magic to teleport the stone away. However, unfortunately, she is captured and is trapped in a magical coma for the next 300 pages.
Brasinger begins with a feeling of imminent danger reflected in the sad lines of the saxophones and the angry low brass. It then transitions to a hopeless sound heard in the flutes and upper woodwinds, signifying Arya unknowingly walking into a trap.
Moving to the ambush, the low brass leads the rest of the band in attacking the elf. Finally, Brasinger concludes with a sad section reflecting the struggle and the shade's anger.
Before we begin, I would like to give a huge thank you to Miss Urban for letting us perform an original piece. Thank you so much, Miss Urban. Miss Urban is an amazing band director. Thank you so much for always being there for us, for being a great teacher, and for letting us do this. We would also like to thank the band for working with us and just being great friends. And then finally, I personally want to thank Gabe for writing this piece with me. We had a great time. We hope you enjoy.
Our next song is A Blessed Hymn. A Blessed Hymn, or Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing, is a Christian hymn originally written in 1758 by Robert Robinson, but later altered by Martin Maiden, I think, in 1760. In 1749, when Robinson was 14, his mother sent him to London for apprenticeship. While there, Robinson took his friends to a church service, which was led by George Whitefield. The message moved 17-year-old Robinson to the point that 3 years later, he became a Christian and joined the Methodists to preach. In 1758, to go with his Pentecost Sunday sermon, Robinson penned Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing as the words for his hymn. The first 2 stanzas are centered on praise and adoration, yet some of the other lyrics hinted this song being autobiographical. One of the most popular lines in the hymn, Here I raise mine Ebenezer, hither by thy help I've come, is referencing the Bible story of Samuel raising a stone named Ebenezer, and remember to tell the Lord divided up. That was fast.
Our next piece is inspired by the modern musical La La Land. a film that explores love in all of its complexity, the pursuit of dreams, and the profound power of the arts. Set in the heart of Los Angeles, the story follows Mia, an aspiring actress, and Sebastian, a devoted jazz musician. As their lives intertwine, they fall deeply in love, but as their careers begin to take flight, they're faced with an impossible choice: to either hold on to each other or to chase the futures they've been working for their entire life. In the end, they follow their dreams, and their love becomes a bittersweet, haunting memory of what might have been. La La Land is more than a love story. It is a tribute to artists, to dreamers, and to the impact that music, theater, and creativity have on the world. One of the film's most powerful moments expresses this perfectly, leaving on a note that reads, "Here's to the ones who dream, foolish as they may seem. Here's to the hearts that ache, and here's to the art that we make."
Symphonic Overture is an exciting piece that utilizes an ABA three-part form. It begins with a quick, fun melody, which is mostly featured in the upper woodlands. Then, the piece transitions to a slower and more expressive sound in the second part. The section is introduced by the flutes and then passed through the entire band. This section rises to a climax before abruptly stopping to introduce the third and final section. This part begins with a snare, and then the flutes, clarinets, trumpets, and eventually the entire band layers into a melody borrowed from the first section. This piece ends with a fun bit of accidentals as a variation to the original melody. Please enjoy Symphonic Overtures.
Thank
Didn't they do a great job? One more time. All right, at this time, I'd like to invite our intermediate band back up. We're going to do one big piece all together.
To end off our night, our final piece, The Magic of Harry Potter. Harry Potter is a famous book series first released in September of 1998 by J.K. Rowling, later turned into a movie franchise beginning in 2001. Harry Potter, an orphan boy raised by his abusive relatives, discovers he is a wizard on his 11th birthday and is invited to attend Hogwarts, where he befriends Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger. He faces his nemesis, the dark wizard, Lord Voldemort, and his quest to destroy Voldemort and his Horcruxes, culminating in a final battle at Hogwarts where Harry... with the help of his friends, ultimately defeats Voldemort and saves the Wizarding World. Throughout this arrangement, you will be able to join us on the journey as some of the most iconic moments are heard, from the first moments of meeting Harry through the final showdown between Harry and Lord Voldemort. Thanks, Cosmin.
You're welcome.
Wasn't that incredible? Let's give them another big round of applause. On behalf of the Lions Council, the Fine Arts Boosters, and specifically Megan Cutlets, the amazing chair of the Boosters, I would like to present Mrs. Irwin with a token of our appreciation for her dedication to the band and the Fine Arts Department and scholars of our school. You have another present, but I can't hold it all. So the impact that Mrs. Irvin has on the scholars that she teaches, but I think Gabe, Jeremy, and that round of applause are much more powerful than anything I could say. So thank you very much, Mrs. Irvin. We appreciate you. Tell her how much you love her. Mrs. Irvin's an amazing band director, but she doesn't like the microphone. So I'm going to say thank you very much for coming out tonight. We really hope you enjoyed the concert, and we hope to see you at many more events in the next week and a half that we have. Tomorrow night is our spring cabaret at the Fleming Island campus. Next week we have the choir concert at Fleming Island and also our upper school piano recital. So join us for those events and have a great evening. Thank you so much for coming.
Well, congratulations.